Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. My brother-in-arms, Paul Bindig, is once again out saving the musical world, so he can't join us today. Miss you, Paul, as always. But I am indeed thrilled again to introduce Mr. Matt Katz-Bohen. Now, Matt is someone I've been wanting to talk to for a while. Matt has spent the last 15 years holding down keyboard player duties with Blondie, but as you'll hear in this interview, he does a whole lot more than that, and you'll hear me fanboy a little bit, not so much actually over Blondie, who I do love, but over his substantive band, Princess Goes, formerly known as Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum. If you're aged anywhere between, well, I'd argue any age, but between sort of 30 and 60, and you have a bit of a predilection for retro-sounding music that doesn't sound dated, then Princess Goes is definitely going to be your cup of tea. Can't recommend it highly enough. And do check out the show notes. We'll have links to that. So we talked to Matt about his work with Blondie, Princess Goes, his work on Broadway, and a whole lot more. I hope you enjoy the interview. Matt, absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for giving up what is a precious Friday evening for you. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So I thought we'd just delve in and start from the start. Matt, tell us about your original development in music. I know guitar was probably your first instrument, but just talk a little bit about your childhood and what got you into music in the first place.
Yeah, I could do that. So actually, piano was my first instrument. Yeah, so I started piano lessons. My mom is an amateur violist. She plays in viola orchestras. She was a violinist, so she was always taking me around to those, orchestra rehearsals and the concerts she would do. And then my father, he's just a massive rock fan, sort of more classic rock kind of stuff. So we had a big record collection, and they separated when I was like 3 or 4. So, I was always going back and forth, and my mom made me take piano, and I did, and I think I liked it. I think I enjoyed it in some way, but then when I discovered guitar music, and especially, I started seeing all these cool-looking people with like long hair and these sort of scary T-shirts, and I was like, what's this all about? And then I said, I think I'd like to learn some guitar, and that's how that happened.
Okay, so you said you think you like the piano lessons. I mean, for most kids, piano lessons can be a bit of a trial. So was there anything that made you realise you didn't mind this so much? Was it the teacher? Was it just the process? Did you enjoy parts of it?
It's funny. It's almost like they try to make piano really annoying for kids to learn for some reason, which I don't understand because it doesn't have to be. It could be really fun. But I had the sort of frustrated teacher who was always perpetually mad at her students, and from some Eastern European country, I'm not sure where exactly, but always yelling and just upset. So that kind of sucked the fun out of it a little bit. And then it wasn't until I sort of stopped taking those lessons and I went back. Then I went to a high school that's called LaGuardia. It's Music and Art, Performing Arts High School in New York. It's public school. It's big. I mean, it's got a bunch of alumni. Theo from the Lunatics was there. Who else? I'm like blanking. There's a lot of notable people. But anyway, once I was there, I started rediscovering piano music and classical music and started playing that again. And then I sort of really enjoyed it when I didn't have, someone screaming at me and yelling at me. And I don't know why. I mean, you'd think you would enjoy that.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the thing. It's like it's so easy to teach a kid how to play a simple melody on the piano. So it's like, why not just do that and learn the other stuff like reading notes and theory? And it's like they didn't want to do that because that would somehow I don't know, compromise the integrity of the classical tradition, which is like so absurd because we're talking about like kids who probably, you know, most people aren't going to like continue it that long. You know, most kids take it for a few years or months or whatever, and then they stop. So, yeah, when I try to teach, sometimes I'll teach people or I'll teach my friends' kids, and I'll try to make it as fun as possible.
Great. And so what, you obviously then discovered some fun in playing. What was your first band that you have fond memories of as far as you realised, I do want to keep going with this?
Oh man, in junior high school, I started when must have been like 12. I would jam with my friend Evan Pasner, who plays drums with Lee Fields, who's a soul singer. I think they've toured Australia and New Zealand a bunch. And he's a great drummer, and we would just hang out together and play, you know, the basic stuff, Black Sabbath songs, Sunshine of Your Love, all that kind of stuff. And then we would do little concerts, you know, just little things at our school sometimes with our friends, just jumping up and whatever, things like that.
Yeah, so that's when you realised you could have some fun with this. So was there a sliding doors moment when you finished school that led you into music full time, or?
Yeah, I think it was just realizing, you know, holy heck, you know, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And then I was like, oh, I could move to New York City and try to make a go of this thing. And so that's what I did. That's what we did. Laurel and I, we had this band. That's my baby mama. We had a band called Daddy for a while. We would do that. And that was a lot of fun in the sort of early 2000s New York scene, which was a great time. It was a great time to be there. So much going on. There still is, but, you know, back then especially, in the pre-smartphone era.
And so was Daddy really your first, what you would argue, as serious artistic effort?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we had a band in high school that was more just being ridiculous. It was called Variety City. Oh, and then that continued into college, actually. And we kind of got more serious in college because, you know, we would still do it as like a super fun thing. And, you know, it would just be wild. It would just be like wild mayhem a lot of the time. You know, just total insanity. And but you know, we tried to put our all into that. And I was playing guitar for all this stuff. This was all guitar based.
Yeah. So what led you, Matt, back to the keyboards eventually? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah. So once we discovered that, you know, it's a pain in the ass to have a real keyboard player in the band, you know, someone you have to call and coordinate with and try to like talk to and stuff. We realized we could pre-record keyboard parts using a computer, and so that's what we did. We just had a really basic setup. We would do iTunes, so this would be like the mid-2000s, and we would just do all the keyboards on the left and the click on the right, so the drummer would hear the click, which was sort of the easiest thing you could do. You know, we could bring a little iPad around, or I mean a little iPod around, and do it. We would do it with iTunes. And so then, you know, I was just getting back into playing the keys, and we got more sort of synthy. And then I believe Debbie Harry came to see us because we played at this club called Don Hills, which was just I don't know if have you been there? Were you ever there?
No.
Yeah. It was like it was sort of the place that like Courtney Love would show up at 2 a.m. or Debbie was always there. You would just always have these legends, but it was also just really a fun, ruckus time. It was sort of off by the river, sort of on the West Side Highway, off the beaten path. So it was like a lot of people just had to be kind of cool to even end up there. And so she came and saw us, and I think she thought we were kind of funny. And then we formed another band called Goon Squad with our friend Miss Guy from the Toilet Boys, he's another amazing front person. And Debbie loved the Toilet Boys, So then she started coming to see Goon Squad, and she's a very good friend of Guy. They're BFFs. So then, I think then Guy told me very cryptically that Blondie may need a keyboard player for an upcoming tour. And then I said, okay, well, I'm very nervous. You know, what do I have to do? I want to audition. And then, you know, I called Debbie, and then she said, oh, great. I've already seen you play like so many times. I'm sure you'll be great at this. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. All right. So then I started touring with them. That was in 2008 on the Parallel Lines 30th anniversary tour. So that was a lot of fun. We didn't make it to Australia that year, but we did in 2010. We made it to I think New Zealand and Australia, and it was a great time. Amazing. The hospitality, the shows, so cool.
It's not uncommon, Matt, but still amazing that essentially through your hard work in other bands, but also some good contacts, you essentially didn't need to, sit in front of the band and audition for them because you were trusted on your previous output, which is great. But were you still somewhat intimidated or concerned about how you were going to pull that off, or you were fairly confident from the start?
Oh, I was definitely intimidated about how I was going to pull it off, because, even though Debbie had seen me perform a bunch of times and play guitar and keyboard, different things on stage, it's one thing to do that at Don Hills for like 200 people and go on a Blondie tour when people have expectations. And that was my main thing, was that I didn't want to let people down in terms of like they want to hear the songs a certain way. So yeah, that was a whole thing trying to figure that out.
And you raise a great point there, Matt. So how much leeway have you been given, both from the start and since, on how you interpret the keyboard parts for some of those songs? Because as you've mentioned, I mean, some of those classic songs have very distinctive sounds. How much leeway do you have to play around with them?
Yeah. I remember Chris took me aside and he gave me like the essential things that I needed to cover and what they were. The sequencer lines, and essentially it was all basically building that all from scratch, because the old keyboard guy, it wasn't Jimmy Destry. They had like this interim guy named Kevin Patrick. Nice guy. We're Facebook friends, and he actually walked me through what he plays, and but then it became clear that he was kind of using some older gear, and it sort of became clear that I was going to have to like get some newer. I got a new keyboard, which is the Roland Phantom G6, and I still love that keyboard. Actually, it's an incredible keyboard. It does so much. It's capable of so much stuff, and the ease of programming is just makes it completely worth it. Like, it has a screen where you can actually see all of your splits and layers. Yeah, which was essential and amazing to have that at that point.
And so setting up, I mean, how much notice did you have, Matt, before you went on tour to get the sounds and everything lined up?
Yeah, I think it wasn't that much notice. It was something like a month, I want to say. It was about a month. And first, Kevin was going to let me use his gear, which was very nice of him. And he couldn't do it. I think he was having a baby or something, so he couldn't do it. But eventually, I took the credit card and I decided to get the Phantom. And I had my friend Kevin Cofield, who's keyboard tech, and he was just incredible. He sort of walked me through everything he knew about setting everything up, and I sort of couldn't have done it without him. I don't know what I would have done without Kevin. And Kevin, he does a lot of pop stuff and a lot of R&B type stuff. He's sort of all in that world. But yeah, he helped me set up all that stuff on the Roland. Then I took a Juno 106 out with me as well, which is a lot of fun too. But it's probably like that stays home now because it's too delicate to be out on the road. Yeah, so the Juno, and then what else? And then the organ, Korg CX3, just because there's a lot of organ on those Blondie records.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. So, I mean, you get the sound set up. Matt, what's your recollections of that first couple of touring shows? Were you sitting there in a cold sweat, or you hit the ground running fairly well?
Yeah, I would say, well, firstly, they were like very welcoming. I already knew Debbie from around. Chris, I love Chris. He's hilarious. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, he's totally very funny guy. Clem is great. You know, they're really fun to hang out with. So that was great. But then I remember the first show was in Baltimore, and that was the first show of the tour. And I remember standing outside with Debbie. She was just like smoking a cigarette in the stage door alley. And these two ladies walked by just mid-conversation. And they were on their way to the show, and they just like saw us. And one of them just started screaming uncontrollably. She was like, oh my God, it's you, it's you. And then Debbie was just there like, you know, casually smoking, like, yep, it's me. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you're underselling yourself, Matt. They might have been Goon Squad fans.
Yeah, they probably were. I'm sure they were, actually, looking back on it. Deep undercover. They were deep undercover. But yeah, then it sort of dawned on me, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go on stage with Blondie. And I sort of, I don't know, I felt all the blood sort of just go like... And somehow got through that first show and survived it. And I was like, okay, maybe I can make it through this somehow. And we can do this.
And I mean, over the last, well, that's what, 15 years? You're coming up to 15 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So over that 15 years, you've obviously hit your stride and are a valued member of the band. And am I right in saying that one of the things that probably keeps it fresh is that Blondie have never failed to release new music? They've they ongoing release new stuff, and so that keeps things a bit fresh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know that they don't want to sort of be like a lounge act. They don't want to fall into that strictly heritage artist category. And yeah, we actually recorded a new album, which is going to come out later this year or early next year. And I think it's just great. It's friggin' awesome. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. And we'll definitely link to that and the previous album. And also for our listeners that haven't seen Blondie live in the last few years, still a spectacular live act. And look, I honestly don't know how Debbie Harry does it, but it's her life. She's just driven and still puts on an amazing show to this day.
She does. She does. It's awesome and incredible. Yeah.
And so what are some highlights over those 15 years, Matt? What are some standout highlights as the keyboard player that have stood out for you, whether it's gigs or interesting moments or songs? What's really stood out for you?
Oh, man. In the 15 years, oh, man, there's been a lot. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. It's hard. Wow.
Are there some particular venues that have, or particular events that you've played that have been particularly special? I obviously get gigs can blur into one another, you know, but are there some ones that you still look back on and go, that actually meant something particularly special?
Oh yeah. There's been so many. I mean, yeah. One thing that comes to mind is so before J.K. Rowling came out as being totally transphobic, completely and utterly transphobic, we played a party at her house, I guess, or one of her houses, which is like this massive Scottish field. It's sort of like a castle in Scotland. It was beautiful. And it was a Halloween party, so it was all done up like kind of spooky and stuff. And it was pretty small. It was just like I don't know, 100 or so people there. And one thing that stuck out to me is that her husband was dressed in drag, like full female drag. So make of that what you will. I don't know what that
exactly
means. But then all this transphobic stuff came out, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's I've mentioned it in the introduction just how wide and varied your career's been, Matt. But there's certainly a huge amount of work, whether it's with Miss Guy or other artists, as far as drag artists and so on. It's an amazing area to work in. What aside from the normal learnings you would take as a musician, what has working with those artists taught you?
What hasn't it taught me? That's what I would say. What hasn't it taught me? Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, it's whenever you're on stage, you know, it should be a metaphysical transformation, and I think that, you know, there's a spirituality in that, in the art form of drag, in a sense, where you're becoming something completely different. Like in the case of Miss Guy, for example. Guy is definitely, he's a guy, he's definitely a man, but he's, you know, he puts on a persona, and that's what he does. And for him, he's having fun with it, and it's also born of, you know, the 80s, and, you know, I'm a kid from that era where I was really into all that stuff, you know, when, like, these manly men would be prancing around in, like, fishnets with teased hair, and you're like, what's going on here? What is this? It's this weird expression of, like, ultra macho manhood, but they're also looking sort of like feminine in some way. And then to have that, see that through Guy, who is gay, and was also bullied for it in high school, and then to be, you know, sort of reclaiming that was so very fascinating to me. And certainly that's why I started going back and seeing the Toilet Boys so much, is because he does that sort of weird hyper-masculine but also feminine thing. I don't know if you've ever seen them. I don't think they've ever been out to Australia before.
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah.
But I've seen videos of them in action and Miss Guy in action, and you're right, it's absolutely amazing, and we'll definitely be linking to that. And so I'm assuming, and it is an assumption, Matt, your work on Broadway and Hedwig and the Angry Inch, was that related to your contacts from that work?
Yeah, it was actually. So playing at Don Hill's and playing like a million shows there, I sort of became part of the house band there. And when we were the house band, we would have special guests that would come up and sing with us. And it would be like Lady Keir from Delight. And one of the other special guests was John Cameron Mitchell, who was from Hedwig. You know, the creator of Hedwig, along with Stephen Trask. And so I think we did Angry Inch, and we did Wicked Little Town. I think we did those two one night. And so then the Broadway show came out, and I reached out to John, and I went, and I was basically given the gig of assistant to the music director, which meant, basically meant like I would play, do the rehearsals. There's like a lot of rehearsing in Broadway. So there was a lot of that, a lot of piano and also guitar, switching back and forth between the two. And also I would sub out for the music director who was playing keys and guitar on stage in the band, because that was the other thing. The band was on stage. So it was a very fun, very punk musical to come to Broadway. One of the best ones, I think.
And I'm guessing here, and again, it's an assumption, but unlike some of your more traditional musicals, is it a little bit more loose? Obviously, I understand it can't be too loose. Musicals, by their nature, have to be tightly choreographed and scheduled. But did you musically have a little bit more room to move than, you know, say if you're doing a Lloyd Webber or a Les Mis or something like that?
Right. Actually, no, that was the interesting thing, was that the looseness was all very carefully choreographed, which was fascinating to me, because unlike with, say, a band like Blondie, where we have a framework, you know, and it's like play this, but basically I could just be like, you know, I'm gonna try this inversion. I'm gonna try this tonight and see how this sounds, and then no one's gonna reprimand me, you know, as long as I get certain things right, certain, you know, the clicks right. There's this certain, I have to do tempos and all that stuff. But yeah, in Hedwig, it was down to like the, you know, every inversion is essentially set in stone, on guitar and on keyboard. Every note is essentially set in stone, and every, you know, movements in terms of which pedals to press down and when to press them down. You know, the timing, the dynamics, it's all perfectly set. And that was all from the mind of Stephen Trask, who's the main music creator, and then Justin Craig, who was the music director. So they sat and they just really created it. And they did an amazing job, because it did seem like loose and punk and crazy, while at the same time being like perfectly, everything happens where it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, so it is that highly disciplined musical approach, but just done well that you wouldn't realize watching it in the audience.
Yeah, yeah, and because they are real sort of rock musician guys, it doesn't sound corny like the way sometimes Broadway will try to do punk and it'll just sound incredibly corny, you know.
Rock of Ages, we're looking at you. So, and so I'm assuming you were grateful then for that theory knowledge back in the day, as far as what you're reading off scores and so on.
So that was the other thing. There's a book to it, but no, it was all done by ear, because I think the book is wrong, and it was getting rewritten, and it was just like, we're just going to do this by ear and just remember what we're doing.
Oh, that is different. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, theory helps a lot in that case, you know, even especially too, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And so was there anything, what years were you doing that? That was whilst you were still with Blondie or prior?
Yeah, that was I think 2016 and 2015, 16, 17. So yeah, definitely with Blondie, playing a lot of shows with Debbie at the time, solo shows, you know, just me and Debbie would go do stuff. And yeah, and then that's how I met Mike, from Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum, which is called Princess Goes now, actually. We shortened
Oh,
that.
just Princess Goes? Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. So I definitely want to talk about this. As I've mentioned in the introduction, Matt, I had no idea about Princess Goes, and then I had a listen, and then was pretty much immediately a fan. That music is just so much up my alley. So for our listeners, well, actually, I'll let you explain it, Matt. What's the musical approach of Princess Goes, and how that came about?
Yeah. So Peter was actually the drummer on the Hedwig show. He's our drummer. Peter Janowitz is our drummer. He was the drummer of Hedwig, and he and I, we had known each other through the New York scene for years. So we kind of reconnected, and we started hanging out and just jamming. You know, we were sort of like, let's do our own music for a while, because I hadn't really been in my own band for a while by that point, and neither had he. So we started coming up with these really cool instrumental jams, and then he was like, hey, let's ask Mike, Michael C. Hall, who was, he's a TV and film actor, and a stage as well. I mean, he was Hedwig. So that's how he kind of came into our world. He was also in Cabaret in like the late 90s, I think, and just killed it. So anyway, we started, you know, he kind of offered to sing on these things, and just kind of blew us away with what he sang, totally unexpectedly. I had no idea what to expect. And then we've just had this great sort of triumvirate of creation where anything goes, and there's no wrong or right way to go about it. We'll all bring in different ideas or different riffs, and then just sort of see how it fits into our world, into the Princess Goes museum, if you will.
So again, for our listeners' sake, I mean, categorization, Matt's never useful, but I love one of the comments on your last release, Let It Go, which was only a couple of months ago, and someone's commented on the YouTube video that somehow the music gives me nostalgia that I don't completely understand. And I couldn't agree with that more. This is amazing music. It sounds like it could be from any time period. It's not dated. I like to think of it, and I know it's not synthwave, but I like to think of it as synthwave without the cheese. It's not cheesy. It's substantial. It's just, yeah, it's amazing stuff. I mean, you must have been thrilled with how well it gelled.
Thank you. Yeah, we are. It's sort of like an alchemy where we don't really understand it, and it's like we don't really want to try to understand it because it just is something that has been happening, and we're just lucky to be able to all be cool with each other and not be at each other's throats all the time.
My assumption is from listening to it, you're playing some of the iconic parts. There's some beautiful pads, there's piano stuff, and then you've also got all this other lush and rhythmic stuff going in the background. So I'm assuming you're running tracks as well. I'm guessing you created all those from the recordings and so on?
Yeah, we are running the tracks because it's impossible to play, all the stuff that you're hearing. Although we do pared down, we have done like pared down sets, and yeah, that's all stuff that we've created. Although Peter, he's a multi-instrumentalist, our drummer, Peter. So I believe he played the piano on Let It Go, like the main piano that's there. That's actually him playing that, and he plays bass, he plays guitar, he plays drums. So we kind of switch off and trade off on all that stuff all the time. And Mike has actually been playing keyboards too. He's been playing really beautiful things on his Mellotron. He got a Mellotron.
Nice.
The newer.
And I mean, you've certainly had a good response, and I know I think you've toured Europe with Princess Goes in different parts and so on. So that's obviously a really strong project for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We did the UK, and we've done several US tours at this point. And we're actually going to be going to Europe again, Europe and the UK, in September into October for about 2 weeks. So that'll be announced officially pretty soon, but we're very excited to be going back, hitting London, Manchester, Birmingham, making over to Paris, Germany, all that stuff over there. So it's great.
And I know from a previous interview you're a fan of the UK in particular, but Europe, and I'd argue that you've got a British sense of humour from the interviews I've watched with you. I think you should have been born in the UK, and that's a compliment, absolutely. And how hard is it organising those tours when, obviously none of us are in, a lot of us aren't in bands that are the size of Blondie. We're organising a tour. There's lots of personnel to maybe pull that off. How hard is it, you guys, if not doing it yourselves, with a smaller team?
Yeah, it's we're lucky because we have a good management team. They help a lot. Yeah, and we have a booking agent who we actually just got a new booking agent. We're all excited about that. So that's essential, I mean, we could be like doing it ourselves piecemeal, but then we would just be like banging our heads against the sidewalk, and yeah, that wouldn't be happy for anyone.
So I'm interested whether it's with Princess Goes, Blondie, or anything else you've done, Matt. Is there a notable train wreck, something where something's terribly gone wrong on stage for you that you can look back now either with horror or amusement?
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, definitely. All of the above. All of the above. Oh yeah, and I should say, Princess is coming out with a new album that's
Mm.
going to be in September. So there is going to be a whole new round of Princess stuff, which I'm super psyched about.
Do you guys release on vinyl? I'm a bit of a vinyl head. Anyway, I'll be
Yeah,
looking
we
for it.
do. We do.
Great.
I don't have it around here, but yeah, we have a beautiful vinyl for our first LP, and we're going to be doing another one with a new vinyl, which is just going to be beautiful. I'm freaking psyched about it. I'm so psyched about it.
Excellent.
But yeah, back to disasters. There's been a few. So I think with Blondie, So I used to play the keytar. I still play the keytar, but I used to do it with wireless MIDI. And I've had the wireless MIDI go out like right at the perfect time. So like I'm like getting to the really cool part in my solo, and then it just like it either cuts out or it'll just hold a note like which I can laugh about now, but at the time it's definitely pretty upsetting, when that happens. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use a long MIDI cable. So that's what I do now. I just use a long ass MIDI cable. And yeah, because the wireless thing, it's always like a little bit hectic. It's always, yeah, you just never know. With Princess, we were playing a gig once, and the floor of the stage was vibrating so much with the bass. They were just pumping the subs that our show laptop just kind of fell over mid-show and just obviously unplugged and everything. And now we have a whole system where it's like Velcroed in very well, and we also have a backup running, and the backup is there to just make sure everything goes. And but anyway, it was kind of a cool thing because our tracks just cut out. We ended up playing a bunch of songs without any tracks, which was really fun too. And I think people appreciated it, and it became just a special moment for people, for me, and for whoever else was there.
Yeah, that's great. And so, Matt, aside from the show laptop, do you yourself, either with Blondie or Princess Goes, do you use anything like Mainstage and plugins, or you tend to be a predominantly hardware-based rig for the keyboards?
Yeah, it's pretty much a hardware-based rig for the keyboards, and then I have Ableton Live for the tracks and stuff like that. And I will play some samples on Ableton Live using their sampler. But yeah, nothing like Mainstage. No, I don't really use soft synths. I mean, I love soft synths for recording and production, but not for live so much.
No, I understand that for sure. And I know you're far from you're nowhere near old enough to be giving advice to younger players, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Do you have any advice to aspiring musicians who are just starting out and trying to establish themselves in what's a very different industry to 20 years ago?
Just go out and play, just go out there and play. And also play like other people's songs too. Like learn cover versions of songs, because you'll learn so much that way about how songs are written and about what makes an amazing song. And yeah, just do it like that.
You raise a great point there that just prompted me. So with your 15 years work with Blondie, is there stuff in the way their songs are constructed that have influenced your own songwriting?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, we used to literally, when I was in Daddy with Laurel, we would literally just try to imitate Blondie songs and be like, okay, how does this work? Like, they're going to the major here, and then they go to the minor sixth, relative minor, and then, the snare does that little thing there, and we would just always be analyzing all the time. And one of the songs we wrote, trying to be like a Blondie song, ended up being recorded by Blondie. It's a song called Too Much from the Pollinator album.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, so that was written trying to basically just write a Blondie song. So it's funny that it ended up on a Blondie album. and quite bizarre, actually.
Yeah, that's superb. Yeah, no, great stuff. And we're going to launch into some of our common questions that we ask each guest to answer. And the first one is tagging a keyboard player. Is there a keyboard player that you admire that you would be interested in hearing about their life story?
I want to say, it's funny because you can hear about so many things now, like it used to be that it was really hard to find out biographies. And I read this quote about how it's like we're just swimming in biographical details at all times now.
Yes.
It's almost like inescapable. You just hear everything about everyone's life all the time. I would probably tag, I have this friend of mine named Sarah Goldstone. She plays with Boy Genius. She plays with them, that group, and Lucy Dacus, and she's incredibly talented. And I would tag her. I would say it's always interesting to hear about, Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics. I always hear about his life. They're such a fascinating band. Always been.
When the Eurythmics reformed for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, it actually brought a tear to my eye. I was so thrilled to see them back playing together.
Oh yeah. They were an essential part of my childhood, really. Like, I was always listening to them just all the time.
But no, great tags between Dave Stewart and your other tag. We love tags of people that perhaps aren't as well known worldwide. So yeah, really appreciate that. We'll be following that one up. So that's. And then there's the dreaded Desert Island Discs question, Matt. So five albums that if you have to restrict yourself to 5, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean that's just an impossible. It's just so impossible, right? Like there's no. I mean, there's no way. And do these have to be like synth-based albums?
No, not at all. Just your 5 can be anything.
All right. So, I've been listening to the Chopin Ballades lately. Arthur Rubenstein, who does it, incredibly beautifully. Martha Argerich, incredibly beautiful. Been trying to learn Ballade number 1. The beginning is manageable, and then it just goes off the deep end, and I'm not even going to try to attempt it because, I feel like those would be good to have on a desert island because it's so varied. Those ballades. Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's a very difficult question. I mean, Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams, Touch, those are some incredible albums. I went through a period last year where I was listening to those albums just nonstop, like every day. They sort of never get old. There's so many great little textures and moments on there. But then another album I was obsessed with, the XX. I love that band. You familiar?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Really beautiful textures where a lot of the times you're wondering if it's a synth or a guitar that's making that sound. And it's nice not to know also. You're like, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know, Which we hear about in Princess a lot. People are like, is that a synth or a guitar making that sound?
Good point.
And a lot of the times it's a synth that's making that sound, being treated in some way with some kind of distortion or something like that, which I like. I like that stuff. I would say Joni Mitchell, For the Roses would probably be there. Love that album. And one more. Then, sometimes when you're on the island, you want to headbang. So I would say any of the Black Sabbath albums, 1 to 4, just for the headbanging.
Yeah, no, that's a diverse pick. Great Great job. So no, that you should be proud. You did that quickly and efficiently as well. So,
Good. Thank you.
and we usually wrap up. I might throw in some supplementary questions in a minute, but we wrap up with what we call our quick fire 10. So 10 questions with relatively short and sharp answers. So, first one, Matt, is first keyboard you ever owned?
Oh man. Well, there was the piano in my mom's house, and then my dad got me a Casio, like one of those Casio tones.
Yep, love the Casio tones. They were classic for the era.
Yeah.
Most important pre-gig ritual for you?
Oh, most important pre-gig ritual, like now, you mean?
Yeah, whatever works, or whether it's, smoking with Debbie and having people scream at you, whatever, you like to do before a gig.
Sometimes it's hard to find people who are willing to scream, but we try to do that.
Good answer. Now, I definitely know the answer to this one, and I'm actually going to call out to our listeners. I will link to this. I've seen Matt do these amazing guitar solos with Blondie, and particularly iconic lines like the middle of "Call Me" and stuff. If ever there was a song that deserved a great guitar working up, and Matt does it beautifully. So the question usually is, Matt, is guitar sexy or an abomination?
I mean, why not both? Why can't it be a sexy abomination?
True. Yeah. That's probably the best answer in 80 episodes. I love it. I love your work on the guitar. You've nearly convinced me as a fat middle-aged bloke to pick up one.
Yeah. So I would say go for it. Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing but sexiness about the guitar.
Transpose button or adjust on the fly?
Ooh, good question. I adjust on the fly now because I've had, I think every keyboard player who relies on a transpose button, which I've done, you always have that one time where you forget to push it back. And I know I've done it. I know everyone's done this. You're like, yeah, I'm good. And you're like, oh, shit, I forgot to push that back. Hold on a second. So the transpose button is a dangerous thing.
Yes. No, good call. I know we sort of talked about this and you weren't really able to identify it, but a favourite gig you've ever done?
Yeah, I mean, aside from Sydney, Australia, which is amazing, we played the theatre in Newtown.
Enmore Theatre. Yep, Enmore Theatre. Yep.
Yeah, that was great. Loved it. Then I saw Devo there. Again, great. Love it there. Such a vibe. I want to say maybe the first Princess gig that we played, which was a tiny club in a place called Berlin in New York. It's like a tiny, you got to go downstairs. Feels a bit like a fire trap. And we were just surrounded by a lot of love. And we played. And actually Sarah Goldstone, who you should tap, she was on stage playing second keyboards at that first gig. She was our second keyboard player, and that was, I think, the only gig she ever played with us.
There you go. No, great calls. And then favourite city you've ever played, if that's at all possible?
Mexico City is probably one of the best places to play in the world. Their Mexican fans are just maybe the best. London is an incredible city to play. I mean, it's London, obviously. And I would have to go with Glasgow also. Glasgow's amazing.
Nice. Yeah, no, great. Best thing about playing live?
Everything. Literally everything. Being able to connect with that many people, being on the same, I want to say the same wavelength, which sounds corny, but it's like, I saw this video of, I don't know if you've seen this sort of video where there's like, they put all this sand on a drum so that it vibrates. It's a vibrating plate, and then when they play different tones, the sand actually forms different patterns. And The idea being that that's happening to your body and the cells in your body when you hear music. That's what's happening. So that's what's happening to everyone in the room, and you're making that happen. It's just incredible. Everything about it.
That's a brilliant analogy. Love that. Worst thing about playing live?
The worst thing is easily the travel that entails, like driving for hours, taking planes, just all that stuff, which kind of takes it out of you physically, I would say.
Yeah, no, fair call. Name one thing you'd like to see invented that'd make your life as a keyboard player easier.
Like a helmet with beer and a straw. No.
I love that. That's good. A good answer. That's excellent.
Thanks.
And with a good sort of keyboard brand name on it. So just not a standard going to the football beer helmet. It needs to be a good keyboard related one.
Yeah. It would say like Roland or Korg or Dave Smith on it.
Are you calling out you're willing to be a sponsor for a major brand for the first keyboard beer helmet? I can put that out there.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. For sure.
Love it. And the last one, Matt, your favourite non-musical activity or hobby. What keeps you sane when you're not playing?
Favorite non-musical. I would say I've been getting into yoga lately, which has been really great. Going out and doing yoga, such a mental reset. Yeah, it is. Big yoga fan myself. No, great call. Matt, I can't thank you enough. We've spent nearly an hour talking, but I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but we are out of time. Can't thank you enough. Hopefully we get you down here with Princess Goes at some stage. Probably a supplementary question, and I don't expect you to be able to answer this in any authoritative way. I'm hoping Blondie goes for another 10 years. I assume you guys are just keeping going as long as you can all keep going. Yeah, I would think so. I don't think there's any talk of stopping.
No, great.
Anyway.
And from what I've seen from your live work, there's no reason to. So, yeah, amazing talking to you, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Great. Thanks a lot, David. Great talking to you, too.
So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Matt. What a great guy, and what a breadth of experience. I'm always in awe of keyboard players that manage to hold down so many different gigs, particularly across musical theatre, rock, and his own outfit, Princess Goes, which, again, if you get the chance, do have a listen. Cannot recommend highly enough. So, yeah, huge thank you to Matt for taking part, and we'll be following up his tags as well. That was really much appreciated. So before we go, I want to give a shout out to our gold and silver sponsors. So to Elk Electronic with K's, .com.au. Definitely check out Elk Electronic. They do some wonderful tutorial videos. They have their own synth repair business. If you're Australia based, do check them out. Brother Paul Brown from the Waterboys, who has just been touring not with the Waterboys but with the Cheetah Willies, and has been having a ball as Brother Paul always does. Thank you, Brother Paul, for your support. Tammy Catcher of Tammy's Musical Stew, we always appreciate your ongoing support, Tammy. Can't thank you enough. The musicplayer.com forums, I always say it, and I'm proud to say it. I've been a member of those forums for 20 plus years and would not be anywhere else to talk serious music stuff, or particularly keyboard stuff. Radio Grande, a YouTube channel that devoted to bringing you funk and soul reimaginings of some classic songs. They're going from strength to strength, which I love seeing. So yeah, do check out Radio Grande on YouTube. And then finally, and definitely not least, is Midnight Mastering. So midnightmastering.com. Mike and the team there do stupendous work around mixing and mastering. As I've said many times, for what it's worth, I use them for my own work and could not be happier. So most importantly, thank you all out there for your support. We love hearing from you, and we've actually had a few emails and messages over the last couple of weeks, including suggesting guests and providing feedback on the Mike Garson and the David Sanchez interviews. Really does make our day hearing from you. So you can keep in touch via a few means. Editor at keyboardchronicles.com. Our Facebook page, just search for the Keyboard Chronicles, and the same goes on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and I don't think Twitter. We're on all of those platforms as the Keyboard Chronicles, and we love interacting with you. Lastly, we do have a Patreon channel, so we do appreciate your support. It does cost a little bit to keep this little boat afloat, and that helps us keep the lights on. You can now on Patreon do a 7-day free trial, so you can log in for nothing and see what we do on Patreon, which tends to be heads up on future guests, asking for questions. So usually we'll get a handful of questions from our patrons to ask our guests, depending on which guest it is. And also sometimes between 7 and 14 days early access to episodes. So if you are willing to do that, patreon.com/Keyboard Chronicles, we would love your support for the price of a coffee a month. Again, thank you for listening or watching. We hugely appreciate it, and we'll see you back here next show.